What happens when you're betrayed by the very person you gave everything to? For me, it was the beginning of a battle I wasn't willing to lose. I was all set. My bags were packed. My flight was booked. After months of being overwhelmed, I finally had the chance to take a breath, to recharge. I was headed to the mountains to visit Julia, my best friend. We'd been planning this retreat for ages, a quiet escape where we could reconnect, laugh, and just unwind. The thought of it made me feel lighter, even though my body at 72 sometimes didn't keep up with my heart's pace. But then just as I was about to drive off, something made me stop. It was that nagging feeling, the kind that hits you right in the gut when you realize you've forgotten something crucial. My hand hovered over the car door when it hit me. I'd left Tom's will behind. I had to go back. The will wasn't just a piece of paper to me. It was everything. It held our life, our dreams, our family's legacy. The will Tom had left before he passed was something I kept close, tucked away in a safe place, a reminder of all we had built together. But now, as I stood there trying to figure out how to fix this mistake, I couldn't help but feel a chill. It was just a quick stop, I told myself. 5 minutes in and out. Simple. But when I opened the door and stepped inside, everything changed. The house was eerily quiet, more so than usual, and then I heard the conversation. At first I thought I was imagining it, but as I got closer, my heart sank. It was Alex, my son, the boy I'd raised, the one I'd always been there for. And now I overheard him talking to a lawyer about something I never thought I'd hear about: taking away my independence. They were discussing guardianship. They were discussing me. I stood frozen behind the door, my hands still clutching the cold brass knob, unable to move. My breath caught in my throat as I heard Alex's voice clearly cutting through the silence like a knife. It was a voice I had known for years, a voice that once comforted me, a voice I had poured my love and care into for so long. But now, there was something off about it. It wasn't the tone I was used to hearing. It was colder, more calculated, more distant. She's been misplacing things. Alex said, his voice low but deliberate, as though he were ticking off a list. Last week she couldn't even remember where she put the car keys. And the bills, she's been leaving them unopened on the counter for days. She can't even keep track of her own taxes anymore. Each word felt like a jab, a blow to the years I had spent raising him, supporting him, giving everything I had to ensure he had the best life. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Was this really happening? Was this my son? The boy who used to run to me for comfort when he scraped his knee, the one who used to ask me for advice on his school projects, now trying to label me as someone who couldn't even care for herself? The lawyer's voice chimed in, cold and detached. With the right filing, diminished capacity isn't difficult to demonstrate. At her age, it wouldn't take much to show that she can no longer manage her own affairs. We can apply for guardianship, and from there we can begin the process of transferring her assets to someone more capable. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Guardianship. My own son, who had been my pride and joy, was talking about taking control of my life, my home, my everything. The betrayal I felt was so overwhelming I couldn't breathe. It was like the floor had vanished beneath me and I was falling into an abyss of disbelief and hurt. I had spent my life making sure Alex had everything he needed. I sacrificed my own dreams to put him through school, worked late nights at the library to pay for his college tuition. I had always been there for him, every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every triumph. I had poured my love into him, believing that one day he would see how much I cared, that he would appreciate all I had done for him. And now here I was, hearing him speak of me as though I were a burden, a problem to be dealt with. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood there motionless, too stunned to even speak. I wanted to confront him, to shout, to demand answers, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the realization that the person I trusted the most was the one who had betrayed me the deepest. As the conversation continued, Alex listed more reasons, forgotten appointments, missed phone calls, the fact that I had taken longer than usual to finish my grocery shopping last week. Each reason was more trivial than the last, but to him, they were enough. Enough to make me sound as though I were no longer the woman who had raised him, the woman who had fought for him, the woman who had given him everything. And that's when it hit me, the full weight of it. It wasn't just the words he was saying or the way he was plotting behind my back. It was the fact that he was trying to strip me of my dignity, to erase me from my own life. He wasn't just taking away my ability to manage my affairs. He was trying to take away my very identity, my sense of self-worth. The anger bubbled up inside me, not in a violent, uncontrolled way, but in a quiet, steady burn. For the first time in my life, I realized that the person I had given everything to, the person I had sacrificed for, was now trying to destroy me. I was no longer just a mother who had given up her dreams for her son. I was a woman who had been cast aside, and I wasn't going to take it anymore. I stepped back slowly from the door, my hands trembling. I didn't want them to hear me. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing I had overheard their cruel plans. I turned around, walking away from the room, but my mind was already racing. In that moment, I knew something had changed inside me. I wasn't the helpless, confused woman Alex thought I was. I wasn't going to let him take control of my life, not without a fight. The woman who had spent years building a life for her family, the woman who had fought for everything she had, was ready to fight again. Only this time it was for herself. I was done being the loving, sacrificing mother. I was done being the one who always gave, who always trusted. I had been betrayed, yes. But now I was the one who would take control. I wasn't going to let Alex or anyone else decide my fate. It was my life, my choice, and I was ready to take it back. I didn't go back to the retreat. I couldn't. The road ahead felt too uncertain, too heavy with the weight of everything I had just overheard. The idea of escaping for a few days to find peace now seemed like a lie, a fantasy I wasn't allowed to live. So instead of heading toward the mountains, I found myself driving aimlessly, letting the steering wheel guide me through streets I hadn't visited in years. My mind was a blur of thoughts, frustration, betrayal, disbelief. Each passing mile felt like another weight added to my chest. The more I thought about Alex's words, the heavier it all became. How had it come to this? How had I missed the signs, allowed myself to ignore them, all those small moments where I should have seen it? But I hadn't. I was too trusting, too hopeful, too loving. Eventually, the familiar streets brought me to an old cafe tucked in a corner of the city, hidden between a laundromat and a faded bookstore. It wasn't the sort of place I would have intentionally sought out, but somehow it was the one my car led me to. I parked and walked inside, the comforting scent of cinnamon and fresh bread hitting me immediately. The moment it reached my nose, I was transported. I had been here before. Tom and I used to come here every Sunday. The cafe had never changed. The wooden tables, mismatched chairs, the little vases with fresh flowers, and the warm, welcoming atmosphere were just as I remembered them. Tom would order the same cinnamon rolls, and I'd sip my coffee watching him read the newspaper, while Alex, just a boy back then, sat beside us. He would ask a million questions about everything from how airplanes stayed in the sky to why the sun set. His curiosity was boundless, his eyes wide with wonder. He was full of dreams, always imagining, always exploring. I could almost hear his voice now, asking those innocent, curious questions that had once made me feel like the most important person in his world. But now he had become someone else entirely. I sat down at a table by the window, the same spot Tom and I always sat in. I wrapped my fingers around the warm coffee mug, feeling its heat seep into my hands, grounding me in the present. But as I stared out the window, I couldn't stop my mind from drifting. I could still hear Alex's voice in my head, cold and detached, as if the son I had given everything for had disappeared and been replaced by a stranger. How had this happened? When had he started looking at me as a burden instead of a mother? When had he started seeing me as something to be managed, something to be controlled? It hurt deeper than I could have imagined. And yet in that moment, I knew something I hadn't allowed myself to admit until now. I had seen the signs. I had ignored them, time and again. I had watched as Alex gradually took over the decisions in our lives, replacing our family accountants, setting up automatic payments for my property taxes, and insisting on handling things I had always taken care of myself. But I told myself it was just him, trying to be helpful, trying to be responsible. After all, he was my son. I should have trusted him. I had no reason to doubt him. But now I understood. This wasn't about responsibility. It was about control. And the worst part, I had allowed it. I had allowed him to dictate my life, to make me feel as though I wasn't capable of handling things on my own anymore, all in the name of help. The truth hit me like a cold wave, and for the first time I felt the full weight of my own complacency. I had been too afraid to challenge him, too afraid to question him, too afraid to stand up for myself. But not anymore. I took another sip of my coffee, and this time the bitterness didn't overwhelm me. It wasn't just the taste of the coffee. It was the realization that I had ignored my own voice for too long. I had been so focused on being a good mother, on being the loving, self-sacrificing figure in Alex's life, that I had forgotten how to listen to myself, forgotten how to fight for myself. As I sat there in the stillness of the cafe, something shifted inside me. I could no longer be the woman who let others define her. I had spent so much of my life pouring myself into my family, giving them everything I had. But now it was time to reclaim myself. It was time to take back control. I stood up from the table, the weight of the decision settling in my bones. I wasn't going to let Alex continue on this path. I wasn't going to let him erase me from my own life. It was time to stop being passive time, to stop being the mother who gave everything away. I was Maria Whitaker, the woman who had raised her son, built her life, and sacrificed for them both. And now it was time to fight for what was mine. I paid for my coffee, walked out of the cafe, and got back in my car. I wasn't headed to a retreat anymore. I was headed to something much more important, to take back what was rightfully mine. The first step toward regaining control had begun. The quiet murmur of the cafe faded into the background as I sat there, the weight of my thoughts growing heavier with each passing second. I couldn't ignore it any longer, how much my life had slowly, silently been slipping through my fingers. Alex had taken control of so many things, and I had allowed it. I had let him. But no more. I couldn't afford to be passive anymore. I needed to act. I stood up, the decision settling in me like a weight of responsibility. My hands shook slightly as I slipped my coat on and walked out of the cafe. I wasn't going to let fear or doubt hold me back any longer. It was time to take back what was mine. I drove in silence, not really sure where I was going, until the familiar sight of the library came into view. The building stood there as it always had, grounded and steadfast. I had spent so many years here organizing rare collections, cataloging books, and managing the archives. It was the place where I had always felt most myself, capable, organized, and purposeful. It was where I had carved out a space for my identity, separate from being someone's wife or mother. It was my place. I parked the car and walked toward the entrance, the echo of my footsteps in the quiet lobby offering a strange kind of comfort. The library still smelled the same ink and old wood, the same flickering overhead lights and rows upon rows of books, neatly ordered as they always were. I hadn't been here in a while, not since Tom's passing, but as soon as I stepped inside, I felt like I had never left. I walked past the shelves, my feet instinctively leading me toward the archives in the back. My hands knew the path, each step pulling me closer to the thing I needed to reclaim. The air felt cool and still as I pushed open the door to the archives room. The tall filing cabinets stood just as I remembered them, their worn handles and faded labels like old friends. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and walked to the farthest corner where the records were kept. The file cabinet clicked open with a familiar sound, and my fingers danced over the papers inside. I reached for a folder tucked in the back, and there it was, the original will. The document that had been Tom's final wish, the one I had kept safe all these years. I pulled it out gently, feeling the weight of it in my hands. It was as I remembered it, clear, precise, annotated with Tom's meticulous handwriting. His careful notes, the little arrows, and underlined sections reminded me of the man I had loved and trusted, the man who had always believed in me. I sat down at the table and laid the will out before me. My fingers traced the edges of the paper as I read through the familiar words. Tom had left me everything: our home, our savings, our life. But it wasn't just about the material things. The will was a testament to his trust in me, in my ability to make decisions, in my ability to take care of things. As I read, I realized just how much I had been disregarding that trust. Tom had believed in me, and I needed to believe in myself again. A renewed sense of clarity washed over me. The confusion, the hesitation, the fear, it all melted away. I wasn't weak. I wasn't losing my mind. I was Maria Whitaker, and I had lived my life with strength and purpose. It was time to take control of my life again, to reclaim the dignity and independence I had let slip away. I took out a pen and notebook, the familiar weight of it grounding me. I began to make a list, a clear, concise plan for what I needed to do next. First, I would contact a lawyer, someone I could trust. I needed legal advice to ensure my rights were protected and to secure my future. Second, I would audit my financial accounts. I needed to know exactly where things stood to make sure nothing had been manipulated or hidden from me. Finally, I would ensure my voice was heard. I would not let anyone, especially Alex, take away my ability to make my own decisions. I was going to fight for my independence, and I was going to win. With a sense of determination I hadn't felt in a long time, I stood up, gathered the will, and placed it back in the file. I wasn't just organizing documents. I was organizing my life. I was ready to take back control. The woman I had been before, strong, capable, in charge, was coming back, and this time I wouldn't let anyone take her from me again. I walked out of the library with a new sense of purpose, the weight of my decision light on my shoulders. There was work to be done, and I was ready to do it. No more waiting, no more second-guessing. It was my time now. The drive home from the library was quieter than usual, but in a way that silence was comforting. It was the kind of quiet that follows a decision, something final, something that makes you feel like you've finally taken the reins of your life again. I had made my plan. I knew what I needed to do next. The first step was clear. I needed to get in touch with someone I could trust, someone who could help me navigate this legal labyrinth I was about to walk through. And there was only one person who came to mind: Valerie. Valerie and I had known each other for years. We met back when I was managing the library archives, and she was just starting out as a lawyer. Over the years, we'd become close friends, each of us supporting the other through various life stages. She had always been sharp, reliable, and most importantly, someone who genuinely cared about doing things the right way. If anyone could help me take control of my own life again, it was her. I called her that evening, my heart pounding just a little as I dialed the familiar number. It rang twice before she picked up her voice, warm but laced with concern when she heard the tension in mine. "Maria, what's going on?" she asked. "I need your help." I said, my voice firm now, "I'm not sure I can trust Alex anymore, Val. There's been a betrayal, and I need to take action. I need to revoke his power of attorney, and I need a new will. One that reflects my wishes, my rights. I'm ready to stand up for myself." I could hear her pause on the other end, and then in the calm, no-nonsense way that was so characteristic of her, she said, "Of course, Maria. I've got your back. I'll come over tomorrow and we'll get started." The next day, Valerie arrived at my house, her presence bringing a sense of calm I desperately needed. We sat at the kitchen table, a quiet determination in both of us. I could see the lawyer in her sharp eyes, scanning everything with a practiced precision. But I also saw my old friend, the one who understood the weight of my decisions. We spent hours discussing the steps I needed to take. The first task was revoking Alex's power of attorney. I had trusted him with it, and now that trust had been shattered. Valerie helped me draft the necessary legal documents, ensuring that they would be filed correctly and recognized by the courts. It was a strange feeling signing papers that would sever my ties to my own son in a legal sense, but in another way, it was liberating. It was a clear line drawn in the sand, a decision that said, I am in control of my life again. Next, we began drafting a new will. Valerie listened carefully as I explained my wishes, ensuring everything I wanted was clearly laid out. This time, there was no room for anyone to manipulate or twist my intentions. It was my life, my decisions, and for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered in the process. But Valerie didn't stop there. She knew that I needed more than just a new will. I needed protection. She helped me organize all my personal and medical records, ensuring everything was up to date and in order. Together, we went through my finances, my health records, and my personal files. Valerie set up encrypted cloud storage for me, making sure my documents were secure, and advised me on how to keep them safe from prying eyes. The final step was setting up a backup plan. In case anything went wrong, in case someone tried to challenge my decisions or undermine my independence, Valerie made sure I had everything in place. Legal support, medical documentation, evidence of my clarity and capability. It was all there ready to defend my rights if anyone questioned them. By the time Valerie left that evening, I felt a weight had lifted from my shoulders. The house, which had felt so heavy with uncertainty and betrayal, now felt like a fortress, secure and protected. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't worrying about what Alex might do next. I was taking control of my future one decision at a time. Thank you, I said to Valerie as she stood at the door ready to leave. I don't know what I would have done without you. You don't have to thank me, Maria, she replied with a smile. This is what friends and good lawyers are for. You've got this. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you really are. As I closed the door behind her, I couldn't help but smile. I was no longer just a mother quietly watching as life slipped away. I was a woman standing up for herself, reclaiming her life. And with Valerie's help, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. I wasn't going to wait any longer. The moment I had decided to take control of my life, I knew I had to be thorough, deliberate, and prepared for anything Alex might throw my way. I couldn't just sit back and hope things would resolve themselves. I needed evidence, solid, undeniable proof that I was still in control of my own mind and decisions, and that Alex's manipulations weren't going to succeed. It started small, just casual observations during Alex's visits. He had a way of slipping things into conversation, subtle comments that seemed innocent at first, but carried a deeper, more insidious meaning. He would bring up care homes casually, as if it was a suggestion for my best interest. You know, Mom, I've been looking into some great care facilities, he'd say, his tone light, as though he was merely looking out for me. There are some wonderful places with activities, great staff. It might be good for you considering you know your memory has been a little off lately. Each time he came over, the conversation would start the same way, meals, small talk, checking in on my health. But then, like clockwork, he'd begin working in these subtle nudges about my need for help. The worst part, it was always disguised as concern, always wrapped in a veneer of caring. But I wasn't fooled. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to plant a seed, trying to make me feel like I couldn't manage my life anymore, like I needed him. I started keeping track of every conversation. I recorded his visits, capturing his every word, his every action. I used the little recorder Valerie had given me, the one I'd used for interviews all those years ago. At first, I felt guilty. I didn't want to think of my own son this way. But the truth was, I needed to protect myself. I needed to be sure that I wasn't just being paranoid, and the only way to do that was to document everything, every visit I recorded, his words about care homes, his suggestions that I might need help with managing bills or my medical appointments. Every time he offered to take control of my finances, I recorded it. The more I listened back to the recordings, the more I realized just how much he had been manipulating me. It was chilling. His voice dripping with concern never revealed the true intention behind his words. The intention was clear now. It wasn't about helping me. It was about taking over. It was about making me feel like I couldn't make decisions without him. The more I gathered, the clearer the picture became. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't incapable. I was just a woman who had been trusted by her husband Tom to take care of herself and her affairs. I was sharp, I was clear-headed, and I would prove it. With each recording, I built my case. I had already talked to Valerie, and now I began to reach out to other legal professionals. I wanted everything covered, every possible angle. I didn't want any chance for Alex to twist the truth, to manipulate anyone into thinking I was too old or too frail to make my own decisions. I also began to take more control over my finances, making sure everything was in order. I contacted my bank to ensure that no changes had been made to my accounts without my consent. I began to keep a journal of everything, detailing conversations with Alex, noting his manipulative comments and actions. Each entry was a reminder to myself that I wasn't the person he was trying to make me believe I was. One afternoon, he came over again, as he often did, under the pretense of checking in on me. The conversation followed the same predictable path, and I braced myself for what I knew would come next. "I've been looking at places, Mom," he said, his tone light, but the underlying message clear. "Some of these facilities have everything you'd need. Maybe it's time we consider it seriously." I didn't flinch this time. I had heard it before, recorded it, understood his game. I let him talk, and when he was finished, I simply looked at him and said, "I'm not going to a care home, Alex. I don't need it, and I won't be controlled." His eyes flickered for just a moment, and I knew then that he was starting to realize I wasn't as easy a target as he thought. I wasn't the woman he could walk all over anymore. I wasn't a helpless old woman who couldn't make her own decisions. I was Maria Whitaker, and I was taking control of my life step by step. I had the recordings, I had the legal backing, and I had my mind. I wasn't going to let him take that from me. I would fight for my independence, and I would make sure everyone else knew exactly who I was. The woman he thought he could manipulate, she was gone. The woman who would stand up for herself, she was just getting started. The evening felt like any other yet. It was far from it. The air in the house seemed thicker, charged with the tension that had been building for weeks. I knew Alex would come by eventually. He always did, always under the guise of checking in on me, making sure I was okay. But tonight was different. Tonight, I was ready. I had spent too long being passive, too long letting him control the narrative. Tonight, the tables would turn. When the doorbell rang, I didn't hesitate. I had prepared for this moment, carefully thought through what I was going to do. The legal documents sat neatly in front of me on the table, ready to be handed over. I didn't flinch when I opened the door to Alex's familiar yet calculating smile. "Hey, Mom," he said, stepping inside. He always sounded so warm, so concerned, like he was doing me a favor by being here. But I saw through it now. I saw the mask. "Alex?" I greeted him calmly, stepping aside to let him in. I didn't offer tea or small talk. I simply gestured toward the table where the papers were waiting. "Sit down. We need to talk." He paused for a moment, and then, as if trying to appear casual, he pulled out a chair and sat down. His eyes flickered nervously to the papers in front of him. I could feel his unease, but I didn't let it sway me. I had already made my decision. I've been thinking a lot. I began, my voice steady but firm, about everything that's happened, about the will, about the guardianship, and about what's best for me. Alex didn't say anything at first, but I could tell he was waiting for me to soften, to go back to the way I used to be, the way he had trained me to be. The mother who would always listen, always give in. But that wasn't who I was anymore. I slid the documents toward him, each piece a statement of my independence, my clarity, and my rights. The new power of attorney, my updated will, and a statement from Dr. Elkins affirming that I was mentally sound, fully capable of making my own decisions. I looked at him directly as I pushed the papers across the table, my gaze unwavering. His eyes scanned the papers, his expression flickering between confusion and frustration. His usual confident demeanor wavered. He didn't reach for the documents right away, almost as though he was hoping they would disappear, that I would take them back, and pretend none of this was happening. "Mom," he said after a long silence, his voice tentative, "you don't need to do this. You're not thinking clearly. I'm just trying to help you. You know I've been worried. This isn't like you." I didn't flinch. The words that used to shake me, the words that once made me second-guess myself, no longer had any power over me. Instead, I leaned forward slightly, my voice calm and controlled. "Alex, I'm not the woman you've been trying to make me believe I am. I'm still the woman who raised you, who cared for you. I'm still Maria, and I can make my own decisions. This is about me, and it's about time you start seeing me as the person I've always been." His face shifted surprise, confusion, and then something else I couldn't quite read. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, that he might try to twist the situation again, but he didn't. He just stared at the papers in front of him, as if the weight of the situation was finally sinking in. "I don't need your help anymore, Alex," I continued, my voice firmer now. "I appreciate everything you've done, but this is my life. I've been giving it away to you for far too long, and I won't do it anymore. You've tried to control things to decide what's best for me, but I'm taking control back." He shifted in his seat, his hand twitching toward the papers, but hesitating to touch them. I saw the uncertainty in his eyes. The confidence he had walked in with was gone, replaced by something I couldn't quite place, maybe guilt, maybe regret, maybe fear, but it didn't matter. I wasn't here to reassure him. I was here to reclaim my life. "I don't need to ask for permission anymore, Alex," I said quietly, my eyes meeting his. "This is what I've chosen. And if you can't accept that, then it's time for you to step back." There was a long pause before he finally picked up the papers. His fingers brushed over the edges, but he didn't sign them. He didn't have to. The point had been made. "I'm not losing you, Mom," he said quietly, almost as if he were trying to convince himself more than me. I shook my head gently. "No, Alex, you're not losing me. You're just seeing me for who I truly am." The air between us was thick with unspoken words, but I didn't need him to say anything more. The battle was over, and I had won. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. I was taking back control of my life piece by piece. As Alex stood to leave, he didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. We both knew the truth now. I wasn't the mother he had tried to manage, the woman he had tried to push aside. I was Maria, and I was in control. For the first time in a long time, I felt a quiet peace settle inside me. It wasn't the end of the story, but it was the beginning of something new. A chapter where I called the shots, where I didn't let anyone, not even my own son, decide my fate. And that was enough for me. The days after that evening with Alex were quieter, but the silence in the house was different now. It wasn't the heavy silence of uncertainty and betrayal. It was the kind of quiet that follows a decision, the calm that settles after a storm. In the weeks that followed, I began to feel a steady strength rising inside me, like I was finally coming back to life, shedding the layers of doubt and fear that had weighed me down for so long. I wasn't the woman I used to be, the one who was constantly second-guessed, the one who allowed others to take control of her life. I was Maria, standing firm in her own power. It felt strange at first, but with each passing day it became more familiar, more natural. The house once filled with tension began to feel like home again. I wasn't just sitting back and letting life happen. I was actively rebuilding it. That's when Valerie's daughter Emma started spending more time with me. Emma was studying to become an archivist, and she had always been fascinated by organizing and preserving history. I had no idea how much her presence would mean to me, but as the days went by, I realized how much it was helping me piece my life back together. She came over every week, bringing her laptop and a gentle energy that filled the space. We spent hours sorting through old family photos, digitizing them, making sure they were preserved for the future. There was something comforting about going through the past, about remembering the people and places that had shaped me. I looked through the photos of Tom of Alex when he was just a boy of our family vacations, and I felt a strange sense of peace. These memories were mine. They were mine to hold on to cherish, and to keep alive. Emma helped me organize everything from medical records to old receipts to the important documents I had once been too distracted to keep in order. She helped me create a routine, a structure that grounded me and kept me on track. It was like putting together the pieces of a puzzle I had neglected for years. And with each piece, I found the house felt less empty. There were moments when we'd sit together in the living room, sipping tea, and chatting about anything and everything. Emma would talk about her classes, her hopes for the future, and I would listen feeling a connection to her that went beyond just being Valerie's daughter. It felt like I was building a new kind of family around me, one of support and love. Not a family based on obligation or duty, but one rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Having Emma around reminded me that life was still full of possibilities. It wasn't too late for me to redefine what my days looked like. I wasn't waiting anymore for someone to come and fix things for me. I was taking control of my future, and Emma's presence gave me the support I needed to continue on this path. The house no longer felt empty, not with Emma's laughter echoing through the halls, not with the warmth of our shared moments. There was life in this place again, life that I had almost lost, but now I was reclaiming it, piece by piece. I knew with each day that I was no longer the woman I had once been, the one who was afraid to speak up, the one who was too willing to put others' needs before her own. That woman had faded into the past, and in her place stood someone new, someone who was strong, someone who had learned that her worth was not dependent on anyone else's validation. The future wasn't something to be feared anymore. It was something I was going to embrace, not just for myself, but for the people who still cared about me like Emma. Together we were building something new, something real, something lasting. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide my fate. I was making my own path, and I knew it was the right one. The journey ahead was mine to navigate, and I was ready. As I sat by the window that evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I couldn't help but reflect on everything I had been through. The house was no longer quiet, not like it had been before. There was life in it now, the kind that came from within me, not from the people I had allowed to define my worth. I had taken my life back piece by piece, step by step. It hadn't been about grand gestures or dramatic moments. No, it was the small, deliberate steps I had taken each day to reclaim myself that had made all the difference. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation or some sudden epiphany to show me who I really was. I simply needed to listen to my own voice, to trust that I could navigate my own way. I thought about the days that had passed, how much I had changed, how far I had come. I wasn't the woman I had been, before the one who let others speak for her, the one who had waited for someone else to decide her fate. I had learned slowly but surely to trust myself again. The silence that had once pressed down on me was no longer there. It had been replaced by the quiet hum of my own thoughts, my own choices, and my own peace. As the sky turned from golden to deep blue, a soft smile tugged at my lips. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hiding behind anyone else's expectations. I had found my voice again, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. For the first time in a long time, I felt complete. I had everything I needed right here within me, and that was enough. Maria's journey is a powerful reminder of the importance of reclaiming our own voice in a world that often tries to silence us. Her story isn't just about standing up to betrayal, it's about the quiet but profound strength we all have within us to take control of our lives regardless of age, gender, or the expectations others impose on us. Too often society teaches us to be passive, to give up control in the name of family duty or fear of rocking the boat. But Maria shows us that the real power lies in our ability to define who we are and what we stand for. It's easy to feel lost when others try to define our worth or when we're caught up in the chaos of life. But it's in those moments of silence, of reflection, that we can truly find ourselves again. Maria didn't wait for permission to take back her life. She didn't let fear dictate her choices, and she didn't let anyone's manipulations define her future. In a world that often expects us to conform, Maria's story urges us to rise above those expectations and trust in our own strength. We must remember that our voice matters, our choices matter, and we have the power to shape our own destiny. So I ask you, how often do you let others define who you are? Are you living for yourself, or are you waiting for someone else to give you permission to live your truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation about taking back control of our lives just like Maria did. You deserve to be heard, and your story is worth telling.